Today's video is sponsored by Shopify.
Come in.
Hey, hi, we have a new project.
Okay. What you got for me?
Yeah. We got a new project, and I believe it's about Shopify App Bridge.
I thought we've done this already.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well, but I don't think it was a tutorial. It was more like, shh.
Shopify App Bridge utility allows you to create. Who wrote this?
It's written right there. I think it was Bernard's. Was it too bad?
Too bad is an understatement. First of all, what is Shopify App Bridge?
It's a bridge to Shopify.
Close. Well, it's a JavaScript library that allows Shopify apps render user interface or UI in the Shopify admin, like the navigation menu, the sidebar, or the contextual save bar, or product selections, and many more. It also allows you to fetch data from your Shopify online store, like products.
Which means
your app and Shopify won't feel disconnected.
right, so how do we do this?
Well, most of the time you don't have to worry about Shopify App Bridge because Shopify CLI takes care of everything for you. What?
Well, what if we don't want to use Shopify CLI?
Well, if you don't want to use Shopify CLI, unfortunately, you're gonna have to use a library or you're gonna have to do everything manually. And you don't wanna do that because it takes time. So you're gonna have to create the OAuth, the installation, the session, the database, and it takes time.
Right, so there's no way to do this without Shopify CLI.
Yep.
Okay, got it. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna take care of that. Have a good day. Hello and welcome to WeeklyHow. Today I will be showing you how to create a Shopify app from scratch and use Shopify App Bridge to create awesome components like the sidebar menu, the title bars with buttons. I will show you how to display a modal, how to display its host, and of course I'll show you how to fetch data from your online store using GraphQL and display them using resource list. So before we begin, make sure that you have npm installed to your computer because we will need to run npm init at Shopify app latest. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin and open VS Code. And then we'll open the terminal, create a new terminal, and we'll execute here the command that I said called npm init at Shopify /app at latest. And by executing this command, it will ask you, Shopify CLI will ask you for a project name. There you go. We'll just call this WeeklyHow. Of course, you can call this whatever you want, but for me, I'll just call this WeeklyHow-YouTube. You can be creative here. So I'll just press enter, and then it will ask you whether you want to use Remix or start by adding your first extension. I highly recommend you use Remix for this, because otherwise, if you select this, it'll just give you an app without anything inside of it. So you'll have to create everything from scratch. So it's always a good start to build Shopify apps using Remix. So I'll just select this, and then it will ask you whether you want to use JavaScript or TypeScript. We'll select TypeScript. Of course, if you want to use JavaScript, you can do that. And now it'll start installing dependencies or it'll start creating your Shopify app project. Okay, so this is gonna take some time. So while we're waiting, why not like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. So if you do that, I'm not gonna get fired. My boss is gonna love me. And that's what we want, right? Help me, please. Now we can just go back to the video. I think it's over. And once that's done, we can finally go to our project by running the command cd WeeklyHow YouTube or the project folder that you have created. So if you take a look here in the Explorer, we finally have the following project folder, and you'll see here all of the files related to your Shopify app project. So the first thing we're going to do is to go to this folder by running the command cd and then the project folder. So cd and then WeeklyHow. I'll just press tab to do it quickly and then press enter. and I should be inside of my project folder now. And now I can finally execute the command npm run dev, and it's going to ask you which organization you want this to be created, and then which development store you want this Shopify app to be installed. So run npm run dev, and then like I said, it will ask you which organization you want the Shopify app to be created. If you want, you can always connect the Shopify app to an existing Shopify app, but it's always a good idea to create a new Shopify app, because later on, if you want, you can always delete the Shopify app that you created. And there you go. Now it's asking me which organization. I'll just select development. Of course, yours is going to be different, so make sure that you select the organization that you have right there. I'll select development. And then after that, it's going to ask me if you want to create this Shopify app project as a new app, or you can connect this to an existing app, like I said earlier. I don't want to use this because sometimes if I don't want the app anymore, I can always just delete it afterwards. So that's why I always select yes. And then for the app name, you can call this whatever you want. The app name is going to be displayed in your Shopify organization or partners account. And you can always just call this the same way you called your Shopify app project. So I'll just do that. I'll just call this WeeklyHow YouTube. And then lastly, I'll ask you which development store you want this app to be installed. I'll select WeeklyHow Winter Edition. Of course, yours is going to be different. Make sure that you have a development store in your partner's account. Otherwise, you won't see anything in there. And after that, it will start giving you the following preview URL. Now, before you start pressing any keys or buttons, just wait for it to be built. You'll see that here at the top. It will say that all migrations have been successfully applied. If you see that, you can press P now to install your Shopify app to your development store. Press P, and it should give you the following window. Now you can start installing this app to the development store. Click install. And there you go, we have finally created our Shopify app and installed it to our development store. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is to learn how to use Shopify App Bridge to create the sidebar right here. As you can see, we already have an additional page here that you can open, and it should give you the following example. I'll also show you how to do this. And also, later on, we're going to learn how to create this additional page title bar, and we'll create a button here like what we had here in the main page. We have here to generate a product button. We'll also learn how to display a toast, and we'll also learn how to display a modal and a resource list that will display all of our products. So that being said, make sure that you have products in your development store before we do that. So if you take a look here, I do have a bunch of products. That is great. But for you, make sure that you have products. Okay, so let's continue and create the sidebar menu. Let's go back to VS Code and then open the app folder, and you'll find here the routes. Open that, and you'll find here the file called app.tsx. And this is where you'll find the ui-nav menu component where you can create those links. So notice that we have here the link home and the link additional page. You can always create as many links as you have here. So underneath of this link component, the additional page link, we can create the same link component, and the to attribute will just redirect this to the app. Keep in mind, you should always start the to attribute with /app because it needs to be under the app.tsx. So /app we'll call this menu products because we want to display products later on. And then for the text, we'll just call this products. So now if we save this and if we go back to our browser, we'll finally have this products menu. So if we click that, it'll just give us a 404 not found because we don't have a route yet. So let's go back to VS Code and create a new file inside of the routes folder. Create a new file and call it app.products. Like I said, always start with the app. So app.products.tsx, and we can start creating here the function component. So export, default, function, products. And then we can return a simple hello world. So we can say just an empty tag and then say hello world. If we save that and go back to the browser, it's still saying 404 not found, but if we refresh this page, finally, we have the hello world. Now let's make this nice by using the Polaris. So here, we'll try to import the following components. We'll import the page from Shopify Polaris. So it should automatically type all those things for you. So we'll just get rid of this and then use the page. We'll also import the layout like so. And then inside of the layout, we'll use the same layout, but we'll use this section. And then inside of the layout section, we'll use the card. And then we'll just type in here text to use the text component from Shopify Polaris. Make sure that you use the one from Shopify Polaris. Okay? And then for the attributes, we'll use text as the following. So we can use this text as h5 tag. And then for its variant, maybe we can just use body medium. And then we can just type here hello world. Okay? We forgot to import the card component, so make sure that you add it here. There you go. Now, if you save this, and if we go back to the browser, we finally have the hello world inside of the card component. So we're just using here Polaris components, but that's not what we want. What we want is to display modals, to display a toast using AppBridge. So let's do that. Instead of typing hello world inside of the card, we're going to create a button. So create button, and then we'll use onClick, and then we'll create a function here. And just for example, let's display an alert and say hello world. Okay? And let's just close this button like so, and then type here hello. We like to type hello here and there, so we'll just change that later on. Okay? Or we'll call this button like that. Save it, and then go back to the browser, and you should have hello world and the button. If you click that, you should say hello world as an alert. Okay? But that's not what we want. Let's try to display a toast. How can we do that? Now, since our app is embedded to the Shopify admin, we can use the Shopify global object. So let's go back to VS Code, and instead of using alert, we will use the Shopify. As you can see, now we have here Shopify var global Shopify. Select that, and then we'll use the toast, and then the function show, and then what message you want to be displayed. So let's say the button has been pressed, like that. So now if we save that, and if we go back to the browser, if we click this, as you can see, now it displayed the button has been pressed. So that's how easy it is to display a toast using Shopify AppBridge. Now the next component that we're going to display is the title bar. We still don't have any title bars in here and a button. So let's do that. Let's go back to VS Code, and then just above the layout, we're going to use the component called ui-title bar. And then for its title, we'll call this products. Okay? So now if we save this and go back to the browser, we finally have the title bar products. Now what about the button? How can we display a button? Well, it's very, very easy in fact. So let's go back to VS Code, and inside of the UI title bar component, you can just simply create a button and just do the same thing on click, and then just type a function, and then close the button and just type in here, create a new product, save it, and then go back to the browser, and there you go. As you can see, now we have the create a new product button. And if you want to change the color of this button, you can use a variant attribute here, and you can select the primary or breadcrumb. I'll select primary, and now if you go back, notice that it's now different. Okay, you can do the same thing for this button too, honestly. So instead of without variant, you can use a variant and set it to primary. Now this button should look different. It hasn't changed yet. Let's go back. So it's still the same. Now the reason why it's not working, that is because we need to use the button from Polaris instead of the regular button. So let's use the button here. And now if we save that, as you can see, now it's different. Awesome, so now we have the UI title bar, we have the sidebar menu. Now let's learn how to display a modal. So let's go back to VS Code and then create a UI modal underneath of the UI title bar. Let's do that underneath. Create the UI-modal, and then you need to give this an ID because we need to reference this once we click a button. So type ID and give this an ID. You can call this whatever you want. I'll just call this product-modal-creation. Or, you know what, let's just call this simpler, create product modal. It's much better. And then inside of this UI modal component, you can just simply create a box from Polaris, of course. So box, and then we'll give this a padding like 500. And then inside of this box, you can just say, this is where you will create the form to create a new product. Maybe we'll do that later on, but let's just fill this up with a simple text. Okay, so let's save this. And if we go back to the browser, now notice that it's not displaying anything yet. Now the reason why, that is because we need to trigger an action. We need to trigger a function to display the modal. So we can do that by pressing this create a new product button. If you click this, it should display the modal. Okay, so let's go back to VS Code. And then the button I'm talking about is the button here. Okay, and we already have here the onClick attribute. So what we want to do is inside of this curly braces, we can just execute the code shopify.modal. What you want to do is to display the modal with an ID create-product-modal. Save it and go back to the browser. And now if you click this, notice that it finally displayed. This is where you will create the form to create a new product. And if you want to add a title, you can always do that by adding the same title bar. Okay, so here we can create the same UI title bar. And then the title, we'll just call this create a new product. And that's pretty much it. If you save that, if you go back to your browser and reload the page, just ignore the error. If you click this, we finally have to create a new product title. Okay, if you want to add a button here, you can always do that by adding a new button inside of the title bar. So here we can create a button, and for its variant, we'll give this a primary button type, and then we'll just type here OK. Save it, go back to your browser, and there you go. As you can see, now we have here the OK button. So that's how you can display a modal using Shopify App Bridge. And there you go. Now we have created the UI title bar, we have created a modal, and we have created the sidebar menu. Now let's learn how to fetch a Shopify online store data, like the name of our online store, using GraphQL. Okay, now the first thing that you want to do is to use the loader. Since we're using Remix, we can use the loader. So above the export default function, we can use the export constant loader from Remix, and this is going to be an asynchronous function. And then we just need to get the fetch request. We're gonna need this later on in the admin. So type request, and then the type is going to be called loader function args. Since we're using TypeScript, we need to make sure that we are passing a type. So loader function args, we need to import that. So make sure you type import, and then it should be a type. So loader function args from remix run node. Okay, and that with semicolon, and then we need to close this, or we need to create this function like that. And now in this loader function, we can use the authenticate admin since we are going to perform an API request in the admin. So await authenticate, so it should be automatically imported. So authenticate from Shopify server, and then we need to use the admin and pass here the request. Now, how can we perform an API request? We can perform an API request by using the admin. So instead of just using await authenticate admin here, we need to use the admin. So admin, and then inside of this admin, we can use the GraphQL. So let's create a new variable. We'll call it response, and we need to use the admin.graphql. And this is where you can perform GraphQL API request. So for example, if you want to get the shop name or the shop ID, you can do that by typing here GraphQL and then query and then fetch Shopify, fetch shop. That works too. And then open and close curly braces. And then inside of this, we need to use the shop. And then we'll just get the ID and then the name. And you should get a response from that. So underneath of this, we can just simply do constant shop data. And then we need to get the response dot JSON and then dot body or data. Okay. And now what you can do is return null here. But we can do console.log and do shop data. And now if we save this, it's not gonna do anything, but notice here in the terminal, we finally have the shop, the ID, and then the name. Okay. Now, if you want to use this in your user interface, in the app, in the products page, what you can do is to use the useLoaderData hook. So we can do that in here inside of the products function. We can create the constant and then use the data from the loader. And then we need to use the hook useLoaderData. And then we need to pass here a type of, and then loader. Okay. Now we can use this data here in the page. So for example, let's do that inside of the card. Let's create a text component. And then for the as attribute, we just need to create this as a span tag. And then variant, we'll use body LG. And then inside of this, we'll just use the data dot name. Okay. Because inside of the data, we have name, but it's not going to work yet because we're not returning anything here in the loader function. So instead of returning null, we need to use the JSON from Remix. So JSON, and then create an object, and we'll use shop, and then we'll pass in here the shop data.shop. Okay. And now since we are returning a JSON object here, and inside of the JSON object, there is a shop, we need to use shop here and they use loader data. Okay. So now we can use the shop here in the text. So instead of data, we'll use shop. There you go. But it's not going to work yet because we need to import the JSON. So make sure that you import that from Remix Run React. Okay. So now if we save this, and if we go back to the browser, we'll finally have in here the WeeklyHow Winter Edition. Okay, so now that's working, let's learn how to get the products from our Shopify online store using GraphQL, the same way how we did the shop title or shop name. So let's go back to VS Code and let's do that here in the app products.tsx. Instead of fetch shop, we'll do fetch products. And then instead of the shop, we'll do the products, and we want to get the first 10 products from our Shopify online store. And inside of this, we can get the edges because this is going to have a pagination. Obviously, you're going to use edges. And then inside of the edges, we get the node, aka the product. So node, and then for each node, aka products, we'll get the ID, the title of the product, the handle of the product. And since this is going to be used in a resource list, we want to use the featured image to give this an image, okay? And then we want to get the URL as well as the alt text of that image. So now that we have a query, we can finally change all of this that we had in here previously. Instead of shop data, we'll call this products data. And then instead of shop, we'll call this products. And then it's going to have a different object now. It's not going to have a shop. It's going to have a products and edges and node. Okay. So instead of shop, we'll use products dot edges because we want to get the products. Inside of the edges, we have an array of nodes, aka an array of products. Okay, so now that we have changed the shop to products, we also need to change the shop here in the use loader data hook. So instead of shop, use the products. Okay, And now this one here, the text, it's no longer going to work because we no longer have the shop.name. So let's get rid of that. And also let's get rid of the text and button. We don't need this two now. So let's just leave this empty for now. And here above the return, we're going to console.log the value of the products to see what's inside of it. But the problem here is that if we save this, it's not going to work. It's going to give us an error. So notice that here we have an error called scroll up. We should have here the GraphQL query error, access denied for products field, because our app doesn't have any access scope yet to access the products. So if we open the shopify.app.toml file here at the very end, if you open that, we don't have any access scopes here. So we need to provide an access scope that will allow us to access the products or write a products, okay? So we need to pass here write or first read underscore products, comma, and then write underscore products, because maybe in the future we'll make another video how to create products using this app, okay? So read products, comma, and then write products. So let's save that. And now what we need to do next is to restart our Shopify app. Okay, so let's just quit by pressing Q, and that should shut down Shopify CLI. And we need to run again the npm run dev. Okay, and now the Shopify CLI should notice that there are changes in the Shopify app toml file. And there you go. Now notice that there is a warning here. It says that the scopes in your toml file don't match the scopes in your partner dashboard. So we need to run the following command, npm run Shopify app deploy. So that's what we're going to do next. Let's copy this command because I can't remember what it says. Let's go back here and then quit once again. And we need to run that command. Okay. So let's just paste that here. Once again, it should be npm run Shopify app deploy. Press enter. And then it'll ask you to include the Shopify app toml configuration on deploy. Yes, press yes. And then select yes, release this new version. And there you go. Now, if you open this URL, let's open that. We should finally have here the following access scopes, read products and write products. So let's go back to VS Code and run npm run dev. And there you go. Let's try it again. Let's press P. Let's go back to the browser. And this time, it should ask you to update the data access. Now we can finally access the products. So click update. That's going to take a little while. And there you go. Now let's go to the products page. And this time the error should disappear. Now let's open the inspect elements and the console tab. And if you scroll up, we should have here an array of nodes. So notice that we finally have here the products. So there you go. Now we can finally create the resource list to display all of these products. So let's go back to VS Code and then let's open the app.products.tsx. There should be no errors. Okay, so we don't need this. We also don't need this. As much as possible, let's make sure that we don't have any errors. Okay, we can also get rid of the console log. We don't need that anymore. What we can do is inside of the card, we're going to use the resource list from Shopify Polaris. Make sure you select that. It should automatically import that component. And then for this resource list, we need to create a resource name, and it's going to require us to pass an object. And for this object, we have singular, and we'll call this product and plural. And it should be products. And then underneath of the resource name, we'll use the items property, and then we'll pass here the products. And then lastly, the render item, we're going to create a function and we'll call it render item. And now we can just close this resource list like so. Now let's create the render item. So just above the return, we're going to create the resource item. So constant render item. So it should be the same. Render item, and it's going to be a function with the following parameters. So item, and we'll pass here a type of, and we want to use the type of the products. So type of products, and we'll use number here. Okay, it's going to be an arrow function. And then inside of the render item, what we're going to do is just to render the resource item. So return, and then open and close parentheses, we'll use the component resource item from Shopify Polaris once again. And then for this resource item, we want to have an ID, but we also need to get those attributes. So constant, we want the ID, we want the URL, we want the title of the product, we want the handle of the product, and we want the featured image. And it's coming from the item.node, because inside of the item, we have the node. If you go back to the console log, if you remember, we have here node. So for each item, we have a node. So make sure that here you're using node. Okay? Now we can finally use these attributes. So here in the ID, we'll use the ID. And then the URL, we'll use the URL. And then for the media, we're going to create a new function just above this constant render item. Should be render media. There's going to be an arrow function as well, but we want to pass here an image, and it's going to have an any type. And for this, we'll return a thumbnail, but we need to check if the image is not null. So image, if it's set, then we'll return a thumbnail from Shopify Polaris, and then for its source, we want to give this an image.url, and then for the alt, we'll use the image.alt text. Okay? That's pretty much it. Otherwise, if there's no image, then we'll return the same thumbnail component, but the source, we will use a placeholder image. So we should have an import statement here, and we want to import the product icon from at Shopify /Polaris icons. There should be an icon called product icon, and we just need to pass it here in the source. So just pass it here, product icon, and then for the alt, we'll just leave it with product. Okay? And now we can use the render media here in the media attribute, just like that. But we need to pass the item. So item. Okay? And that's pretty much it. We can just close this, and then inside of the resource item, we need to display a text. So text, and then for the as attribute, we'll use h5. And then for the variant, we'll give this a body MD. And then for its content, we'll just pass here the title. But it looks like it's not working because we need to also import that here. So there's no text anymore because we get rid of it. Okay? So now that should be good, but we're missing something, the handle and then the featured image. It should be featured image here in the render media, not item. Okay. Next is the handle. We can just create a div underneath of the text, and we'll just pass here the handle. And that's pretty much it. Now we can save this. We can go back to our Shopify app, and there you go. As you can see, we finally have all of the products. If you want, you can just use onClick to display something whenever you click this button or these items. So let's do that. Here in the resource item underneath of the media, you can use onClick. And then you can just type here a function. And you can say something like Shopify.toast.show, and then you can just create a string here that says this item is called, and you can just interpolate here something like the title of the product. So let's save that, go back to the browser, and there you go. As you can see, it's working. And that's pretty much it. That's how you build a Shopify app using Shopify CLI, and that's how you use Shopify App Bridge to create this amazing web components. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know by hitting the like button and sub to the channel if you haven't yet. And if you haven't joined our membership program, feel free to do that as well. There's a join button down below. And if you do, you get perks like amazing badges, exclusive emojis, and you get
amazing perks. That's pretty much it. So yeah, I want to say shout out to Shopify once again for sponsoring this video. Because of them, I was able to create this madness, this amazing video. And shout out to my boss for not firing me. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching once again. If you enjoyed, yeah, like, subscribe, and I'm sure you're gonna enjoy the next video that I'll putting out. There's gonna be plenty more content coming. So yeah, also join our live stream. It's gonna be next week or next week, depending on when I publish this video. Yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.